If you ever look up online the top 10 highest rated mangas of all time, there's always one of them that stuck out to me, and that is part 7 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure Steel Ball Run. I mean, Jojo's is an amazing series with a huge fan base, but is the manga really as good as other masterpieces like Berserk and Vagabond and Vinland Saga? Yes it is. But why is that? I mean, seriously, how did this bizarre manga about an 1860s American horse race become one of the highest rated manga of all time? Well, when you put that into the hands of one of the greatest manga authors of all time, Hirohiko Araki, you get an unsurprising concept for a manga that ends up becoming a masterpiece. And it takes it from being just another part of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series into actually becoming one of the best mangas of all time. Steel Ball Run takes place after a major reset for the JoJo series, where following the ends of part 6 Stone Ocean, the entire universe is reset, which makes it so Steel Ball Run part 7 is almost set in an alternate universe of the very first part 1 of JoJo, which brings it to my first reason as to why this is such a highly rated manga and why it's such a masterpiece. And that's despite it being the 7th part of the JoJo series, with it starting after a great reset for this series, it's something that a new fan can easily pick up and read without having read any of the previous parts and still be able to understand and enjoy it, while also making it to where longtime fans of the JoJo series can look back and see the similarities it has to the earlier parts while still getting an interesting and new fresh part to the series. JoJo as a series was first released all the way back in 1987, making it a series that's 36 years old. And after the most recent part 6 finishing its anime adaptation, there's over 190 episodes of the JoJo Bizarre Adventure anime. And if you wanted to catch up on all of the manga up until part 7, you would have to read 752 chapters. So yeah, safe to say just getting up into this part, you would have a lot of reading or watching to do. But like I already mentioned, you really don't have to do that to enjoy part 7. Really, after reading it, I feel like all that you really need is a basic understanding of what JoJo is. And that's really that JoJo and Joestars are good, Dios are bad, and there's this thing called stand powers, which think of it as like a personification and reflection of the user's self-image into an avatar or psychic entity form, and basically relate the stands to how the personas are in the Persona universe and how the fights go there. The general premise of Steel Ball Run is set in 1890s America during the peak of the Wild West, following the Steel Ball Run race, which is a horse race, which is hosted by its founder Steven Steele. And this is basically a race consisting of a series of checkpoints and routes, starting you off and taking you from San Diego and then finishing in New York City, spanning about 3,700 miles long. And of course, someone who's able to complete this faster than anybody else will get a grand prize of $50 million. And this causes tons of people all over the globe to all flock to America to compete in this race. And you're going to mainly follow around two people, which is going to be Johnny Joestar, which is a paraplegic ex-jockey, which first of all, what other anime have you read or seen that has the main character in a wheelchair and paraplegic other than JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? And it's able to do that so well, and it really is a testament to the great writing in it. But you have Johnny Joestar, and then you also have Gyro Zappelli, and these are the main two characters you're going to follow along on the race as they kind of band up together to go throughout the race together, because it is a very treacherous race. It's going to have a lot of obstacles, and of course there's going to be people trying to attack you in order to get ahead for themselves, and so it's good to have someone with you. And the next reason easily has to be its characters, as well as its character design and art style. Now with JoJo starting in the 1980s, it has came a long way with its art style and character designs, and you can definitely tell by looking at the first part Phantom Blood to see that it was very similar to the mangas of that time. Look at things like Dragon Ball and Fist of the North Star and how the characters looked there. They were very buff, very masculine, and this continued with JoJo for a while until about part 4, where I don't know if you want to call it the femboyification of JoJo or however you want to pronounce it, but the characters got a lot less buff, a lot more lean, and a lot more, well, they pose a lot now. And JoJo is notorious for its unique art styles, and especially as of recently for its character poses and how it's almost fashion inspired. And that brings me to part 7, because I think out of all character designs in the entire JoJo universe, part 7 easily has the best. Easily one of my favorite JoJo character designs of all time has to be the main character, Gyro Zappelli. In my opinion, he has a pretty nice spin on character design for JoJo. Alright, thank you, I get it. I'll be here for the rest of the night or the rest of the video. And even as you look at the villains like Oyakamova, or however you pronounce it, he's a pretty menacing looking villain, and even the main one, Funny Valentine. Not to mention, I think that part 7 also has some of the coolest looking stands so far in Jojo. I mean, don't get me wrong, each part of Jojo does have its standout stands, and some of them who don't look the best, but taking part 3 for example, easily the most recognizable Jojo part with stands. You look at Star Platinum and he's basically just a purple Jotaro. You look at the World and that's basically just a golden Dio. Or look at Abdul's stand and it's just a Firebird. But part 7 has great looking stands that also have pretty amazing powers as well. Some of my personal favorites easily have to be 20th Century Boy, which I know is based off a song, but that's also an amazing manga that you should look up as well. You have Civil War, you have Tusk Act 4, which is easily one of the most unique stands I've seen so far. And then of course my personal favorite, D4C. And that brings me to the next reason why this is one of the best mangas and the best Jojo parts. The setting. I mean, just going through the different settings of each Jojo part, you have part 1, which is just a British royal family almost. You have part 3, which is just a journey throughout Egypt, but it doesn't really have any basis as you go to these different places. You have part 4, which is just a bunch of friends in the Japanese town. You have part 5, which is like an Italian crime syndicate, which I do admit that one was pretty cool. And you also have part 6, which is an American jail. And part 5 and 6, they do have great settings I think are really interesting, but what could be a good old American Western? 1800s Western America is easily one of the most famous historical eras of all time. And it's really not something we ever really see in anime or manga. I mean, I seriously tried to look online to see if I can find any other popular animes or mangas set in this time period, and I really couldn't find anything. And I know someone will probably comment that one rare anime or manga, or maybe I'm just forgetting one, but it's not something that you really see represented that often as the other periods. And I know that's because anime and manga are mainly made in Japan, but the thing with this one is it's fresh, it's new, it's exciting. It's a new premise for a manga that you don't get to see as often, but it's also done so well. Now, as much as I can go on about how well written and amazing of a manga it is, that's not to say that it's a perfect manga and it's without its faults. Now, the beginning of the manga has one of the best starts to a manga that I have read in a long time. It very clearly sets up the premise of it, lets you know the characters that you're going to be following along, and it's able to describe what they're going to be going through in the race and give you this premise right from the start without wasting time. Now, where it goes wrong for me is kind of with when it introduces the stands into this series. Although I know that's the formula and that's what the series is about, it's using the stands for these fights, there's something that I like to call the Jojo formula. And this is one thing that I think is a love it or hate it moment for Jojo fans. And that's that whenever a stand fight happens, it occurs almost the same way, just with different powers. For the first 1 or 2 chapters, they have absolutely no idea what the stand power is. They can barely even see where the user is, and they're just losing the fight. And then comes the 3rd chapter, or the last chapter in the stand arc, and they're able to somehow find a weird way to overcome the stand ability. They win against the battle against this new stand user, and then they move on to the next, and it's a Jojo formula. Rinse, wash, and repeat, and that's basically Jojo's part 3 onwards. But honestly, when I was reading it with this one, I didn't really mind this as much as the other parts, because with the stands, they were so exciting and new, and they felt very threatening and menacing, that when they were losing, I was understanding why. Instead of parts you get in like part 5 to where you're almost screaming at the screen because they're losing in a dumb way, as you have Misa just losing to a stand because he can't see someone literally outside the window from him, and you're just wondering how. Looking at people like how they handled Diego Brando, which is a new form of Dio, and even Sandman, who was set up from the very first chapter of the series. And this can take us to our 3rd reason on why Silbar Run is such an amazing series, and that's how it handles villains. Especially looking at Funny Valentine. You can look at all different types of animes and look at who they have as the main villain. I mean, look at Dragon Ball and how for one part they had the main villain as the god of the universe and things like that. But what is a better villain than the actual president of the United States? And slight spoiler alert for the manga if you haven't read it, but if so, I don't know why you would be this far in the video. But anyways, come to find out, Funny Valentine is the mastermind behind this entire race, and it's not what it's built to be, of just a race for a cash prize, but it's actually a sinister plot for him to gain different quartz parts that are going to give him power. And I know that's a really weird sentence, and if you haven't read the manga, you're probably wondering what that means, but you should read it and find out the reason why. I don't want to spoil too much. Now, one thing that I think makes a villain a great villain is when they have a reason for being bad that's almost good in a way. As you find out, the reason for him wanting to gain all these quartz bars is really for the entire country of America. He wants to benefit the entire country, which is the job of the president. But in doing so, he's also doing it in an inherently quote-unquote evil way. And that's what makes it so that you can either look at him as the antagonist of the series or also the protagonist in a way. But he is still, at the end of the day, truly an evil villain. I mean, he's involved in a lot of murder, he does political corruption, and there's also this scene where he does something to a 15-year-old, which we won't really talk about. I really don't think that needed to be in the series, but anyways. And to make part 7 even better, we basically get confirmation that the very first stand user was none other than Jesus Christ himself. So in short, yes, part 7 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure deserves to be one of the most highly rated mangas, and it truly is a masterpiece to read. Now, whether or not it's the best JoJo part to you, well, that's up to your own opinion, and you'll have to read it to find out. Me personally though, I love this series, and I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10. I definitely wouldn't say it's a perfect masterpiece, but nonetheless, it is a masterpiece. So you'll have to let me know down in the comments if you agree or not with all my points I've made throughout the video. And I hope you like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Stay awesome.